Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today, we are going to talk about practices. We are what we practice, so we're going to discuss that a little bit. But first, we will do our self-connection practice.
All right, so as usual, feeling your butt on what you're sitting on or noticing what your feet are touching. And this one, we will place our hands. You can maybe not interlace your fingers. We're just placing hands, resting them on the back of your head. So, Steph, how do you describe this for people who aren't watching us?
Like if you were lying on the beach with your hands behind your head.
Ah, that's a nice one. Okay. And then we're just going to roll forward. So letting your head and neck hang. And then open back up. And open those elbows up. Look up. This is that expansive part of this movement. And then when you're ready, just curl back in, sort of like the turtle poking his head back into a shell. And then opening back up. You can also pair this with breath if you want. Pair one movement with an inhale and one movement with an exhale. Just follow your own pace, going inward. Bringing the elbows together if that feels okay for you. And then when you expand, widening the elbows, opening up that heart space. And then just shaking it out when you're ready.
I like these opening and protecting movements.
Yeah, they're so important because both are things that we need to practice doing in life. Sometimes we need to go inward, and sometimes we need to open up.
Mm-hmm.
And they also remind me, sometimes you need to say no to things, and sometimes I need to say yes to things. And these movements remind me of the duality in life, and that neither side is right or wrong or better or worse. They're both necessary.
Yeah. And all of these movements, when we're bringing thought and intention to these movements, they're representative, right? We are what we practice. So when we're practicing opening up, we're practicing protecting ourselves, going inward. Those are both skills that we need to have in life. So connecting with them here folds out into our larger life outside of this podcast.
Yes, I love when movements are symbolic of how we live life, right? Do you let your body move in a way that's symbolic of the dualities of life? Or do you tend to hold your body quite rigidly in one posture or position? Which I notice, I think most people do, unless you bring intention to that. And even the people who might have a regular practice of moving their body differently, I still think you can add an extra layer of seeing the symbolism in your movement, what it can represent.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people move their bodies at specific times in specific ways. There's something to this intuitive movement and the feeling and the representation of the movement that's different and in the moment.
Yeah, I remember one of the movements when I told myself I want to start slowing down in life. I tend to have this go, 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 lots of things on the go at the same time, push through, white knuckle my way through life kind of way of living in the past. And when I decided I want to shift out of those patterns, one of the things I practiced doing was I'm going to practice walking slower. Because I noticed that I would walk really fast. And I also noticed I'd talk very fast. And those things were representative of the energy I brought to my life and this belief that everything has to be done quick and fast. And that's called being efficient and effective. And so I chose slowing down speaking and slowing down walking as really symbolic practices for me. And they were actually really hard in the beginning. And often when I work with people, I'll ask them those questions. Do you tend to talk fast? And a lot of people say, yeah, I do. And when they start sharing things with me or they want to tell me what happened, I'll ask them if they're willing to practice something in their sharing. And, often they'll say yes. And I'll suggest that they tell me what happened on the weekend, or they tell me this thing that they want me to know about, and that they take a pause after each sentence and just let their body catch up with what the words coming out of their mouth. And they notice such a difference.
Yes. Yeah, we carry frantic energy with us. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's so important to know that we're embodying our values in those moments,
Right. Yeah. So this episode is really about, I think, creating a life that's in alignment with what we say we value and carry, and what we value and what we care about.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I was listening to something and someone had said, we are what we practice. And I liked that. I liked that phrasing. And the questions that were presented were, is what I'm practicing aligned with what I most care about and what matters to me? And is what I practice aligned with my longings? Right. And for some of us, it might be giving ourselves permission to discover what our longings are.
Right. And to go against the grain of what we think that our longings ought to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I thought we could talk today about a time in our lives where we were practicing things, and what we were practicing wasn't actually very much in alignment with what we claimed to care about.
Yeah.
And start from there. What do you think, Steph?
I like it. Yeah. It's tricky to pull this apart in hindsight, because really, when I wasn't paying attention, which was most of my life, I wasn't practicing anything consciously. I was just going through these motions and frantically doing all of the things that I thought I needed to do to have the life that I thought I wanted, which was not examined. This was not an examined life that I was suggesting for myself, right? It was just all the things that you're supposed to want, which I, over time, accumulated and realized I was miserable,
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I like what you shared here, because I think it highlights that many of us aren't. If you asked someone, have you been practicing in your life to, live a life aligned with your values? I think many people, and myself included, would say, no, I think what Steph described just now sounds more like what I was doing. And we wouldn't call that practicing. And yet it is, because we're doing something over and over and over again. But it just might have been, I'm doing something over and over again without much intention and on autopilot. We're still practicing something. We're still creating a habit and a pattern of living.
Yeah, definitely.
Right. And so bringing awareness to the patterns that we were creating. And then now with more intention, noticing the impact of those patterns and whether we like those impacts or not, and whether we are at a place where we feel, I want to bring a change to what I've been practicing so that it does align more with what matters to me or what I say matters to me.
Yeah. And I think there's an important distinction here between practical matters that need to be addressed, how you make your money, how you feed your family, that kind of thing, and the deep values that you hold, which are more feelings like love, acceptance, understanding, things like that. I think we function so much in the practical, everyday, workaday world, and we tie our values into that, but they're not necessarily so obviously linked. Some of my practical values involve things like ease and flow.
Mm-hmm.
But the things that feel most deeply important to me are awareness, and the collective consciousness is what feels of deep importance to me. And to many people, like my family, that might sound sort of insane. Well, of what practical use is the collective conscious? Well, maybe not much right now. And the deepest truth for me is that that's what feels important. That's what draws my energy and attention. So it became at some point important for me to honor that even though that may not have immediate practical applications, it does give me direction and purpose in life that are immediately practical and of real importance to my purpose and my reason for being.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, like this sounds like a very connected value of yours that you've discovered. I'm assuming this wasn't your value 5 years ago.
It was
10
not.
years ago.
No, it wasn't.
So what were you valuing before? And was what you were practicing matching up with what you claim to value?
I don't know that I would have claimed. I think I would have probably claimed this phrase that now just feels revolting internally is, the I give zero fucks. Well, what do I value? Well, my loved ones, puppies, things like that. It was a really disconnected feeling. I would have had to outsource that information in a way, And yes, the life I was living reflected that completely. I felt lost and spinning my wheels and trying to find something that fit, trying to find something that felt good, trying to find answers somewhere.
This is interesting because you're like, yeah, it actually did fit. And also I noticed over time, over the years, that I give zero fucks wasn't truly what my deeper value is.
Not at all. Yeah, such a pain response, right? Yeah. I give a lot of fucks. I give very deep and intentional fucks. Yeah. And it feels good not to be throwing that all at the wall, A lot of the pain I encountered in life was offering care for things that, either it wasn't reciprocated or I wasn't connected with my care in a way that that I put out into the world in a way that I could receive back.
I think this is such an important piece to give attention to, because I think what you were connected to in years past, I anticipate a lot of people can connect to. I give zero fucks. And when I first met you, my sense was you were shifting out of that. And yet I still can remember feeling, I'm like, I think she has some of that in her. Like I could still feel it. And as I've gotten to know you better over the years and watched things shift for you, I'm like, this lady cares about a lot. She cares so much about people. She feels so deeply. And I think you represent people who, as very young children already, were very deep feelers. And those feelings were perhaps felt overwhelming. And you had to tell yourself, I give zero fucks because it's too much to feel all of that. I don't know what to do with it all. And you walk around the world with this shield and giving out this energy of I give zero fucks, when that's not who you truly are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
And it's a way of protecting ourselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Often the hardest looking people are the softest and the squishiest. The people who've developed an aggressive edge are the ones who feel the most and don't know how to cope with that. Yeah. So we protect ourselves like sweet little armadillos.
Sweet little armadillos.
Yeah.
So as you discovered what your deeper values were, how did you actually discover what your deeper values were? Like, how do you go from I give zero fucks to I care about deeper consciousness?
Yeah. Well, with time and practice. So the more of these self-connection practices, like there are so many paths here. And the one that you and I have been on is really to do with self-connection and bringing conscious awareness to patterns in our relationships and in our behaviors, our responses, our relationships to our emotions. And difficult real life conversations. So me getting real with myself, with my own feelings, and then desiring to be in real, honest relationship with my family requires me to be honest, So when I'm describing to my mom, for example, who might come at me with a number of really practical life questions, what's the plan? What's the plan? When the deepest feeling is, wow, I really don't care about these things that you're telling me I need to care about. Like the feeling in me is that none of that is important to me. So what is? And then in having to answer those questions is where it comes up, and when you look at my human design chart, for example, it's all in there. Like I universalize everything, for example. That's the way my mind and my heart works. And it's because I have this overarching concern isn't the right word. It's like a deep interest. I feel like I'm here to contribute to an evolution of human consciousness that's taking humanity somewhere, and being able to say that out loud has taken work, being able to connect with that myself and really connect with the depth of importance that I personally feel about it, makes that part of my life.
Right. So what have you been practicing recently or as you became more connected to this deeper value of yours? What have you been practicing in day-to-day life? Like if I were to hang out and watch you, what would I notice?
There's a lot of eyes closed going on over here in a few ways. So, a deep part of this for me is maintaining that self-connection, paying attention to my notification system and to the sensations in my body, which give me so much information that informs my practical workaday life. That begins with mantras and meditation. So I make sure to spend a good amount of time just sitting quietly and noticing my thoughts and feelings and focusing intentional energy on putting my focus thusly. So there are some mantras I do in most mornings. I have some rituals and some physical practices that are just all about self-connection and slowing down, being quiet.
Right.
The other eyes closed thing is also from my human design personal health systems that I'm doing this human design experiment right now. And one of my instructions has been to eat with my eyes closed. So having a really inward experience there. And that is causing self-connection and clarity and discernment beyond what I could have imagined. Knowing really specifically what I want in my mouth, like what textures, temperatures, tastes feel good, and what external stimulation pairs with that.
Right.
Has a really specific kind of frequency for me.
I noticed a theme because you said earlier, I tend to go universal with things. And it's like embracing that you go universal and not making that wrong. And now also strengthening your ability to go like internal, like with you.
Yeah.
Right. What feels good for you, and not closing the eyes of let me bring the attention, shift it from the universal, the bigger picture, to like, what about right here, right now with me? What feels good?
Yeah. In my view, we're a universe unto ourselves. And I think it's of crucial importance that we all play a role, that our role is specifically required. So knowing and holding on to myself and not losing myself in that larger universal context feels really important to me, because we're all instruments in this symphony of the universe. So knowing ourselves and playing our part is part of this symphony.
I love that. Playing our part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's duality too, right? How do I play my part in like the bigger context of life? How do I play my part with myself? And like the in between, how do I play my part with the people who are important to me in my life?
Mm-hmm. And to bring honesty to that too, right? Because it's this symbiotic relationship. Us representing ourselves honestly and fully in relationship to another person gives us feedback that we then use to inform ourselves and the relationship, on and on. So part of me being able to bring myself to these difficult conversations means that the difficult conversations have clarified for me more completely who I am and what role I want to play and how I want to interact.
So how has that self-connection shifted what those conversations with your mom feel like?
Well, I don't feel like I'm running anymore. You know, there was like a running to keep up and have satisfactory responses or fit some role that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with me. So I recognize, like, one of the things that I can actually see, if a camera was recording this, it would be like, okay, then I paused and took a breath in a way that I just wouldn't have done before. You know, it would have been words stumbling over words, trying to make this overall feeling of, you know, whatever it is being questioned, trying to make that feel either manageable or make the feeling go away.
Right.
It just doesn't feel that way anymore. It feels slowed down.
I'm curious about convincing energy. Like, did you feel that you needed to be in this convincing energy with your mom before? Yeah. And has that shifted?
Yes. And we actually had a conversation about that specifically. Like, I want to share, like, human design, for example, it's this system of self-knowing. And that's been feeling important to me lately. It's another path that I want to explore. And I'm also aware that I like to explore paths, you know, like I'm a person who maybe does a smattering of things instead of going super, super deep in one area. And that required some permission to give myself that that's the way I feel and that that's okay. And I value, and my mom values, wanting to share what we're up to. You know, we want to stay connected in that way. But if I feel like I'm going to share something that's going to be poo-pooed, you know, like, oh, this silly thing, like, well, then I just don't want to bring it up, you know? So I had that conversation with her. It's like, well, I want to talk to you about this thing, but it feels like I'm going to have to be defending the thing and making the thing make sense to you. And that just doesn't feel good. So let's just talk about something else, you know? And she was able to hear that and go, oh, well, that doesn't feel good to me. And you can see the progress in the next conversations. There's a different energy about it.
That conversation in itself is an example of practicing what you claim to value, right? You're claiming to value, I want to have connection with my mom. I enjoy sharing with her what I'm up to and what excites me. And in order for me to feel good and an openness to do that, I want to feel that what I'm sharing is being welcomed and received as it is.
Yeah.
Right. And you were able to work with your mom and figure out a way to shift an old dynamic that allowed you to both actually be able to live what you say you value.
Yeah. I think that's really a big one too. I think everybody values connection, for example. We all value the feeling of being heard and loved. And we all want everything to be nice and easy, right? So we might want to jump over those difficult conversations or not face those difficult conversations. And that really is just part of it, being able to admit the ways that we're feeling and have those conversations. That can be almost a feeling of like conflicting values. I really value ease and flow, but I also value deep connection, which will require something that isn't quite ease and flow, you know?
Which leads us to potentially more ease and flow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Something you just said caught my attention. You said something about admitting the way we feel. In that phrase, like there's already so much in there. At least how I hear is that to me says, ooh, do I want to admit that? Like to myself and to someone else? Like there's something to hide in that, like that there should be some shame in how I feel. And like, it makes me wonder, like, how many people have found themselves in that position in a moment where you think, oh, do I want to admit that I feel that way? I definitely know that I have been in that, right? Do I want to admit that, you know, I feel really scared right now. I feel torn. I feel like all the things I was trying to hide. I feel jealous, right? And what if we had a lot more practice with, I want to report and share how I feel.
Yeah.
I want to let you in to see, you know, and sense how I feel and what I think. Rather than, oh, is it okay to admit this? Already has this underlying, I don't know, like we're deeming that it's wrong already. It's bad already.
And this is the programming we've got, right? You know, when we're doing this work in groups where we're just reporting our mind, sharing our feelings, we're doing that in small groups or in partners, the response is so important. And the response is either nothing or thank you. That's it. And that's enough to just smash our conditioning to pieces, because we're always expecting to be either told, you know, it's fine, either you shouldn't have those feelings, some variation of that, some variation of you're bad or wrong, or please shut up, or you'll be fine, which is just a variant of could you shut up in a nice way. You know, that we're not naturally programmed to share our feelings and feel that our feelings are going to be received without needing to be edited or truncated or fixed.
And the irony of that is we actually are born sharing our feelings. A baby shares their feelings. Our baby, like a baby that's just born, is expressive in volume and in the whole spectrum of emotion. And yet we've conditioned ourselves to not share and think that that's normal.
Yeah. I mean, how do you welcome feelings? How do you welcome sounds? Watching Shalina with her baby, and like the baby's making all these giant shrieky noises right now. And the response is a celebration. Like, wow, you've got such a voice. Like, hey, you have a lot to say. Hi. You know, there's no nobody's wincing, or there's so many cues that we take that our behaviors are bad or wrong, and that babies are also absorbing. And, we've both got lifetimes of that conditioning.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Whew.
What are some of your practices currently?
My practices currently? I have some practices currently, but I want to talk a little bit about when I wasn't practicing what I claim to value. And something that comes to mind is I claim to value family time and connection with my kids, which anyone who knows me knows that is a huge priority of mine. And in many ways, I was tending to the needs of my kids. And what I realized is, if I was being really honest, though, there were areas where what I was practicing didn't really line up with what I claimed to value. And for me, it was working a lot. And I only noticed it in the last year, what I was doing in the past, because like you said, I wasn't really thinking about it. It wasn't intentional. I remember bringing my kids to school in the morning, going to work, picking them up from school, doing all the mom things, taking them to sports, feeding them, getting them into bed. And then it would be 9 or 10 o'clock, and I'd pull out my laptop and I'd be in bed and I'd work the second shift. And that wasn't just an exception, like, oh, I've got a deadline, I've got to get this thing done. That was what was normal to me. And so I remember nights at 10:30 at night, knowing that I had to create, workshops for, where I was working. And it was a norm to sit there at 11:30 at night, at midnight, just creating. And I felt good in the sense that I was doing work that I loved. I didn't question it. It was just what I had considered my norm. And then after Daryl died, so that's almost 3 years now, like my body said, like, no, like you're just going to take a break from everything. And you're going to use your medical leave and your sick leave because your body needs time to recover. And after that, I never went back to working at night. If I work at night now, it's the odd exception. But it's definitely not like, I don't have this routine of putting the kids to bed and then pulling out work. And my body cringes at the thought of that, because sometimes I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll just pull something out and finish this. And everything in my body says, no, that is not actually aligned to your value. And the value that I had of being connected to my kids, I was connected in many ways, but what got in the way was this work. Like I'd barely sleep. So I was tired. I was so tired when they were awake and we could do stuff. And I was I was there, but the quality of that time together could have been better.
Yeah, could be better.
If I had practiced. And what I realized I needed to do all those years ago was practicing practicing. There's a lot on my plate already, and I would love to help you out. And it's a no, not until this date. Right. But I had such a belief that I just have to say yes when people ask me to do things. And if I could make it work without actually dying, that means I can do it. Like that was what I was conditioned to believe. And so in order for me to live in alignment with that value of I value connecting with my children, I needed to start scheduling my work life differently and saying no to things and saying I'd love to and not yet.
Yeah. So you're also describing the quality of connection, right? Because you're saying that you were connected before, but you could have felt better, been more present. I think it's really important what you just said, that if you're not dying, then you can do it. That I think we run on that so much that while we're doing the thing, it's like, well, there's a depth and a quality and an energy that we bring when we're tired or pulled in too many directions. It's not presence.
Yeah. So, and I think that's the thing, is it helped me to become just more discerning about the quality of the connection that I wanted to have.
Mm.
And it's easy to lie to ourselves, because I was like, but I am connected. We're good together. We have fun.
Yeah.
So I think it was important for me to discover what I truly wanted, like another layer of connection was what I truly wanted. And to see that the way I was living my life was never going to give me that.
Right.
Because if I'm going to be working till midnight every night and not prioritizing rest and play and sleep, then the quality of my connection with my kids can only be so much.
Yeah. And that's going to be your life then,
That's going to be my life. And if you want that to be your life, that's okay.
Yeah.
But part of me was saying, but that's not what I say I want. And that's not what I want.
Yeah.
But my actions aren't really helping me create what I want.
Yeah. There's such a nuance there that I think comes from this self-connection. Because if the bar is, it's not killing me, then there's no discernment to be made, right? There's no degrees of presence or joy or connection. There's just death or not death.
That feels like it sums up my old way of being.
Mm.
Because if I could do it, if I could make it work, I lived a lot from that make it work energy. I can make it work. And I almost wore that as a badge of like honor. I think I did. I can make it work.
Yeah.
Right. And I can also do it really well. And that was also a deceiving thing for me. And it also played into the old belief that I need to perform to be loved and accepted. So many layers of it.
Yeah. Wow.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like we're both wearing black today. It's like funerals for our past selves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it feels good to let that go, let those beliefs go, let those autopilot patterns go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So for me, like knowing that, because my second office in the past was my bed. Like once the kids were in bed, I think because my body was actually tired, it wanted to be in bed. But then I would like bring the laptop in, and that was my office. And it's funny to think, like when I think about my bed right now, that's not like the computer isn't in the bed, and I get to have a reprieve at night. And it feels like we're talking about two totally different people.
Mm.
Yet that was how I lived my life. And another version of practicing what I claim to value, I have claimed to value balance and ease, or at the very least claim to want it for decades. And I remember probably 20 years ago when I was studying in the Netherlands, my supervisor had said, well, you say you don't like being busy, but I'm going to challenge you on that.
Show me the evidence.
Yeah, because I think you actually like it. And I was so offended and so pissed. And he was like one of these supervisors who I really admired and respected, and he had contributed like really greatly to my learning and growth. And I was like ready to like be like, you suck.
Yeah.
But because I also knew like this man doesn't just fire off like random things for no reason. Let me become curious about why he would say something like that to me. And then I could see. And what I had to learn was I had to learn to notice when there were choice points in my life and choice points in my day to day. Because my past self, there were no choice points. I remember telling him, but I have no choice. He's like, you always have choice. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have to, my words were, I have to do this. I need to do this. And that's how I ended up having a life of, well, if it doesn't kill me, it means I can make it work.
Yeah.
And so that's been huge for me, to slow things down enough to notice choice points.
Yeah.
And one of the choice point things that I've been practicing the last couple of years is when I claim I want ease in my life, and then I pack my schedule so full.
Mm-hmm.
And it used to be like seeing clients, and I would just make it work whenever. And I would just try to squeeze it into any part of the day that I could, because I felt bad saying no to people. And I felt that I should be available. If someone needs help, I should be available. And it just made for a really hectic life.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't die. So I was like, I could do this. And I remember when I started my own practice, when I quit my job and started my own practice, thinking, okay, well, when am I going to tell people I'm available? And really what felt good was to give it 2 days, 2 full days that I would see one-on-one clients. But then fear crept in, and I thought, well, if I only work Thursdays and Fridays, what about people who can't come Thursdays and Fridays? Let me then also work Saturdays. And then I thought, well, if I don't work Sundays, what about people who can't come on Saturdays? So then I remember at some point it was like, okay, Thursday, Friday, and then Saturday and Sunday. And it wasn't just like limited hours on Saturday and Sunday. I was like, well, I technically don't have to do other things, and I could work around it, so let's make myself available from 9 to 5. Luckily, that was also a time when I was like getting more and more connected with my body and what my body was telling me. Like my fear brain was telling me, you need to be available all these days, all day long. But my body was saying, ugh, that doesn't feel good at all. And so the first thing I did was, I think something like no more Sundays. And I noticed, oh, body feels way better. No more Sundays. And then I thought, well, what about only every other Saturday? Oh, that feels good too. And then it became, what about only half a day on every other Saturday? Oh, that feels much better. And then eventually it was like, how about no Saturdays? And that shift came relatively quickly once I was in tune with what felt better. And I don't see clients on Saturdays and Sundays now. There's plenty of practitioners who do, and people can go find them if they want to work with them. Mm-hmm. And otherwise, people make it work somehow. And they're grateful for our time together, as am I. And I trust that I am, of course, not the only one for people. Yeah. And that people can find other solutions if what I have to offer doesn't work for their schedule. Yeah. That took me a long time to learn.
That's beautiful. This is part of the playing your own part in the symphony, right? The parts that actually feel like a yes in your body. I feel like there's some purity there that's like the most deeply true, And I can remember a time where if I was working with somebody in some capacity and I saw availability of 24/7, the feeling would have been like, yes, like they're there for me anytime I need them. And the more I became discerning with my own time and energy and getting real with that, I don't find the offer of 24/7 to be appealing anymore. Like, I don't want your tired, unavailable support. If you're not really available, if you're always available, what does it end up really meaning? I would love access to somebody 24/7 in like some sort of emergency or crisis. You can call me anytime, even if I'm asleep, but I don't want to encourage you to phone me every night when I'm sleeping.
Yeah. And I realized like the self-responsibility part. If I want ease and flow, then I have to do something to help create that. Right. And that's like the prompt that I like using is like, I said I value X, Y, and Z, so I will practice whatever, right? Like if we claim to want something, we have to be willing to take steps to help make that happen, right? And I also like the prompt, I claim to value X, Y, Z, and in reality, I see myself valuing this more, right? This other thing more, which is also fine. Yeah. But it's about like what you said earlier, becoming honest with yourself.
Yeah.
For me, this is
that I want to want, but I don't actually want.
Yeah, your actions don't show you that that's actually what you want right now in your life, right? And so to me, this is about living in integrity with what we say we want. And we might realize that what I claim to value has less priority for me now, and that's okay. Or it might not even matter to you at all anymore, and that's okay. Or you might realize, I actually do really value that. And so it means I need to change up some things.
Yeah. Slowing down and examining, right? Noticing those patterns, noticing the things we've been valuing just because we've been told to value them or they've always been part of our life, and really slowing down and feeling into what is a yes. So important.
Yeah. What are you practicing right now?
The thing that's coming up most in my life, I mean, I'm constantly doing different types of self-connection practices, because that informs so much of how I move through life day to day. There are a couple of pieces. Dream work is something I've gotten back into lately. Not only for the expository element of it, of like noticing what's coming up in subconscious and in symbolism and how that might translate into real life or decision making or things like that. But also lucid dreaming is this really empowering and energizing experience. If people don't know what that means, it means you can train yourself to become conscious that you're dreaming while you're dreaming, and you can take action within your dream to various degrees. And the effects of that are empowering in your day-to-day life, and they're really energizing. Like there's an antidepressant quality, like an inspiring, shiny quality that brings to life. So I'm focusing and keeping a dream journal and attempting to do that every night because it feels so nice. It's like a cold plunge for your spirit in a way.
I like that.
Yeah.
Cold plunge
so that and having difficult conversations with my housemate. Not that the conversations themselves are like, we're not planning to have difficult conversations, but living together as adults who are aware of our patterns and behavior and wishing to break free from, whatever family conditioning or life conditioning that doesn't feel the best to us and doesn't feel like values we want to bring into our home. There's a huge element of admitting feelings in that context, So making space and time to focus energy there because it's important to us. But neither of us necessarily wants to do it. We just want to flit around having our lives. But there is a value there that requires time and energy. So,
yeah, I like that you remind us that what we claim to value and what we value doesn't always match up with that initial surface short-term want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
How about you?
Right now I'm practicing. So the value for me right now is like a home that feels like a sanctuary. And that's significant for me because home always felt like a war zone growing up. Like not with physical violence, but just energetic, emotional, verbal. There was a lot of fighting. So home was actually never a place that I felt like was a sanctuary, was a place to rejuvenate. It wasn't a place of reprieve for me. It wasn't a place that was like cozy and let's hang here. Like from as early as I can remember, probably grade 5 or 6, I would do as much as possible to like not be home ever. Because my reprieve was in my friendships. My reprieve was in school. My reprieve was in having like positive relationships with teachers and feeling encouraged by them. So home has never felt like that safe place. And when Eddie and I split and I moved out on my own, it was a very weird experience because it was just this box that I lived in. Sort of like a dumping ground, if you want to call it that, because everything healing for me up to that point was hobbies and social connection, everything outside of the home and nature. And so my home would be this place where like I would come to sleep at night and I would like drop off bags here and there. It was never a place that I was like, let's make this a cozy place. It's just for me. And at some point, I think after the ending of a different relationship, what I saw in that person was like home was this like real, like a nest for him. Like he loved being at home and he had like puttered and tinkered and just made home a really nice, cozy place. And I thought, maybe there's something in that for me to learn and practice. So over the years, like, you know, I've been more intentional about what furniture do I want? Like something that seems simple and like, how could it be that hard to think of what plant pot to buy? But like when you never feel like your space matters and it's never anything that's meant to help you feel good, then it's just another pot. Like who cares? So really sort of curating things over the years that bring me a sense of joy and peace has been important and so healing. And home does feel like a sanctuary now, almost to the other side where I'm like, I've gotten very good at hermiting. I might need to poke my head out a little bit more often. But connected to that is what I'm practicing is if it takes 2 minutes or less, do the thing and put it away or tidy it up.
Yes, I've heard you doing this in the last few weeks.
And that's never really been my way. A little bit, I think, because I never valued my home space as that sanctuary and as a place that I deserve to feel really good in. But I also know there's ties to other old beliefs of if you're going to do something, it should be perfect.
Right.
And if I don't have, and in my mind, perfect takes a lot of time. And if I don't have a lot of time, then obviously I can't do the thing. Right. So in my mind, I just associated everything that needs to get done with, I'm going to have like 3 hours to do it. Right. And I don't have 3 hours. So, well, let's just leave it. And it would eventually get done, but more of like, wow, it's like really not feeling good in here anymore. Yeah. And then it'd be this massive tidy up, clean up.
Yeah.
So
Even
it feels
you
really good.
talked about this when you were doing some tax stuff and financial things last week, right? And it makes me think about the feeling when you know you've got a whole bunch of things that are on a back burner.
Mm-hmm.
To give any attention to any of those things, even for a minute, feels like you're getting on top of a situation that was just being ignored before, you know? So 2 minutes towards something that might take 3 hours is a good contribution.
It feels like that now. And I believe that to be true now. But at the time, like what I also realized, and I hope that anyone that has seen themselves in what I share knows this too, is when we have never learned how to be with overwhelm, then like it can be really hard to do these things that seem like normal adulting things to do.
Right.
Because when you've tried to protect yourself through not seeing the things that have to get done, and then they pile up and you know they're there, and like you consider turning towards it for 2 minutes, the feelings that come up feel so big.
Yeah.
Right? That it's like, not going to. And so what I've found too is the more that I have grown my capacity to feel my feelings and not feel completely overwhelmed by them, the more I can do these things that I've always avoided doing because it was too much. Like, I've only recently realized that, I mean, I knew I was a highly sensitive kid. I realized that maybe 10 years ago. But I realized that it doesn't come naturally to me to organize and systemize things. And it would always overwhelm me, but I didn't know how to articulate that. And so I never got support in doing that. And so all these things that might be easy to other people of like, put the thing away here, but I'm like, but where? Like, where should it go? And I've had to teach myself and find systems that work and make sense for me because that's not how my brain is wired.
Right.
So these things that seem like it only takes 2 minutes to put the thing. I remember like Eddie, my ex-husband, saying like, everything should have a place and you should just put it back where it belongs. That makes so much sense. I get that. And it seems really easy. But for the life of me, like, I don't know if it's that perfectionistic background or like just the way I saw the world. I'm like, but how do you know where a stapler should go? Because it could go here, it could go there, it could also go there. All of those make sense to me.
Yeah.
So it's actually quite funny and it's humbling and I feel a lot of sweetness around it because if you looked at me, like, you know, over the couple decades, like you would see this person who's intelligent and like highly functional and really loves her work and can do it really well. And then there's these other things that seem very simple to a lot of people that I'm like, that's hard for me. I don't get it. Right? Like for the long
values embedded in that, you know, like, and I think ways of experiencing the world that are different for everybody and again should be valued. I come back to this role in the symphony. For you, I remember, so you have this way of valuing relationships, including with objects and including with your space and how you interact with it, that's completely different to mine. And it's just baffling for me and really important for you in ways that make perfect sense. So like for me, I'm like, the stapler can go wherever I put it, and then I'll always know that the stapler's there. This is a system that works beautifully if you're on your own. It's not so great if you're with other people and they also need to know where the stapler is, but I digress. I remember you telling me you were going to talk to somebody about like a kitchen consultation that involved if I'm making food in this location, my eyes are most often going to go over there. So the thing that should be there is something that, like a painting that causes certain feelings in my body, things that just would never have occurred to me. So there's this value for you of the interrelatedness of things and how you feel in a space that's like really important to know.
Yeah, and like it was my friend Lindsay who's like phenomenal at being intentional about creating your space, and she creates beautiful spaces. And what I realized about her way of showing me how to use my space was it really gelled well with the fact that I'm highly sensitive. I'm highly sensitive to like visual things. And so I'm easily distractible. And so she was saying, well, if you are cooking and you stand here, because like I asked her to help me sort of maybe organize my house or make it look nice or whatever. And one of the first things she asked me to do, it wasn't like, what colors do you like? Or like any of those kind of superficial things. She said, show me where you stand most of the time in the kitchen. Like when you're cooking, like which direction do you face? And I was like, what are you talking about? Okay. And I stood there. She's like, what do you notice about how you feel when you stand there? I'm like, I don't know, feels okay. She's like, okay, I want you to stand over here on this side of the island. What do you notice about that? I was like, oh, doesn't feel good. Right? I didn't like the texture on my feet, felt different. I didn't like where my line of vision went. It like felt depressing. And she's like, you can orient your body and you can make your workspace in your kitchen match what feels best for your body. Mm. Like, what? And what she was saying was, she's like, I said, one of the things I want to be more intentional about is like packing a healthier lunch, right? I was just busy with kids and busy with work, but it was one of the values I claimed. She's like, you can make that easier if you want. I was like, yeah, of course I want to make it easier. She's like, when you stand and you're packing, like when you're packing up food for your lunch, this is when I used to like go to an office. Where do you usually stand? And so again, I like stood sort of close to the fridge. And she's like, okay, when you stand by the fridge, where do your eyes go? And I'm like, oh, they sort of turn and look down the hall. She's like, if you put a painting or some art on that wall that visually reminds you of that feeling you want to have when you eat well, is going to help you when you're like standing by the fridge to like consider that value of yours again. Yeah. So like in this conversation, like what I'm noticing is like the ways we can set ourselves and our space up for success to make doing the things that we claim to value, easier.
Yeah. And there's something deep in there about loving self-acceptance for me when you talk about this, when I think a lot of us are identifying now as highly sensitive people. And I kind of want to reframe that as sensory. You talked about this. There are certain things that are going to catch your eye. There are certain energies that are going to arise, and we can manage that for ourselves. And that the fact of being sensitive and sensory is not a problem. It doesn't make us bad or wrong. It just means we know that our attention is going to be pulled by certain things and that we have some empowerment within that.
Yeah. It's been a life changer for me to understand sensory processing and like how to like work with it. Like one of the why I'm so good at what I do is because I can flip from here to there to there and there and grab the things and like meld them together and they fit the moment. And I realized that's because my attention can be pulled in so many different ways. Right? So yes, sometimes, if people want me to live a certain way, have a conversation a certain way, then I might not match what they're hoping for. But if someone wants like intuitive, in the moment, the ability to pull together different layers of things that can make a difference, then like that's me. But it also means that if I'm standing in the kitchen, I might be like, oh, look at that over there. And like all of a sudden I'm in the living room, and then all of a sudden I'm in the bedroom, and but I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Gigi.
So it's been a big deal to see that I actually have, in 2 minutes, I can do a lot that makes my body feel better and my space feel better. It's taken me a long time to believe that to be true and to actually see it happen.
Yeah, to provide yourself with the evidence of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, do you have a self-connection practice in mind that can drive this point home for us in our bodies?
Yeah, I like this one. You talked about us wearing black, and it was like a funeral for our old ways. So this practice is like a little bit like of a letting go practice. And so we can begin again by finding that anchor spot for your body. For me, it's my butt on the ottoman. I feel my hand on my ankle. And just notice your breath. And we'll take a hand, and I like to start with, like, you can place your right hand on your left shoulder. Just let yourself feel the weight of that hand and see what that does for your breath. And then we're going to gently just sweep down your arm. Sweep all the way down until you get to your hand, your other hand, and then give your other hand a squeeze. And then you do this little motion, a little like toss, like gentle tossing away. Right? It's like you just grabbed something from your hand, gave it a little squeeze, and toss away. And it's a very subtle and gentle acknowledging of like, this layer can be shed. Right? And you can keep doing that on one side. You can also switch sides, starting up at the shoulder, feeling the pressure and the weight. And then when you're ready, just sweeping. What do you want to sweep away? What's ready to be let go of? I like to let my fingers sort of do a little dance when I let that stuff go.
I do this when I'm massaging other people. You clear out the energy and then let it go. It's nice to do with myself.
Yeah. Right. And like, I do practices of letting go that are a little bit more overt too, where we're like really tossing. But I also really like the subtle gentleness of this, like just letting it go.
Yeah.
Right. Thanking it, letting it go.
Yeah. It feels like a soft, gentle energy today. That's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anything else you want to say?
I think I'm all talked out.
All talked out. Okay. Thank you, Gigi. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And as always, please like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.